Well, folks, this is Stevie. Before you letting my mind wander. Now, I've complained about this in the past, but not recently. YouTube is supposedly so successful. The algorithm is utter stupidity. The algorithm to present suggestions is utterly stupid. Just like most of the people at YouTube. Go look at the Creator Studio channel. Let me show you what I mean. Now I'll make some comments along the way related to life experiences. So yesterday I put up a video about Ozzy Osbourne. It was actually an analytical video, but it centered on the announcement of his death. And afterwards, I was looking through and I played a music video called Give Me 3 Steps and Freebird. Freebird's one of my favorite, and 3 Steps Towards the Door is like that too. Leonard Skinner. "60 Minutes Mafia Stories." I don't know how the Mafia stories got mixed into this, but watch what's happening. So here's Ozzy Osbourne. It's okay. I played a video. Something about a rock star. That guy's Leonard Skinner. He had a funny shaped guitar, probably a custom made one. Leonard Skinner. Oh, and then somehow, because I viewed one video 3 days ago about the Vietnam War. Hell on Earth. Most intense battle of the war, Vietnam, graphic footage. So we've got 3 themes. Mafia, Leonard Skinner, and Vietnam War. Die Here or Die Later, Vietnam War. Full episode, America's Book of Secrets, The Mafia's Sinister Success. The Last Mafia Boss of Boston. Leonard Skinner. This one over here, Chuck Zito, that's about Mafia. Ozzy Osbourne's Best. Mobster Dominic Sonny Black Napolitano. I remember him. And then this guy here, talking about Osbourne. Now remember, it's not 100%, but watch the density of it. Here's another Vietnam one. Leonard Skinner, about the airplane crash. I was there when JFK got shot. They say he was actually killed by the Mafia, in case you didn't know that. Here's some more about rock and roll. Here's the Leonard Skinner again. This one is I was cellmate of John Gotti. This is Mafia. This one is Vietnam. This is an old guy talking about when he was a kid fighting in Vietnam. Osbourne, Vietnam, rock and roll. See the big variety in the suggestions? World War II, Battle of the Bulge. Okay, that's not Vietnam, but it's war. Mob hits. Buford Puster. This is another mafia one. There's Osborne again. Leonard Skinner. Viet Cong. And then this is the current big thing here. Leonard Skinner. Vietnam. Remember, they're in threes. Ozzy Osbourne. Sinatra's Dark Past. The Jersey Mafias who got Frank Sinatra going. Go look it up. I remember that. That was the accusation. Heroin in the Vietnam War. Another mafia one. Victory at Sea, Guadalcanal. Okay, that's Second World War, but it's war. Frampton, that's rock and roll. Sopranos, fake mafia. Finding Saddam, another war. But look at the high percentage of three themes. Here's this multi-killer here. Grateful Dead, rock and roll. Led Zeppelin, rock and roll. I had accepted I would die, Vietnam. More about Osborne's death. The world's most evil prisoners. That's about mafia. Whitey Bulger's killer. Killing big mafia guy. Something's happening. I can tell you what it is. I can tell you what it is. A guy just went by on a motorcycle at maybe 80 miles an hour, and there's a sheriff's car right behind him. Bet you it'll be in the news tomorrow. CIA's longest manhunt. The hunt for Carlos the Jackal. That's sort of mafia. The Eagles. Osborne. Remember, these are in threes, and look at George Thorogood. That's rock and roll. Leonard Skinner. Platoon, a movie about Vietnam. Something about the Nazis in the Second World War. Philadelphia Mob. This is Paris Island, Marines. Here they are again, Leonard Skinner. Bronx Tale, this is about the Mafia. Leonard Skinner. Notice it's getting denser. The Allman Brothers, all right. Fleetwood Mac, more rock and roll. Capone, Vietnam. Do you see any real variety being offered in this? Do you think the algorithm is just stupid? IQ of about 2? Who invented it? About Gotti, that's Mafia. Ozzy Osbourne, Rolling Stones. There's about Richard Mitchum. Remember, what was the name? Thunderball Express, something like that? Is in North Carolina running illegal alcohol in a 49 Ford. I remember that movie. Woodstock. Sylvie informs Tony that Chris is not doing well in his job. Sopranos. It's Mafia. Prince. That's rock and roll. Bonanno. That's Mafia. Marshall Tucker. Rock and roll. Kansas, rock and roll. Leonard Skinner again. Mafia boss turned informant. I'm just showing you what they're offering me. This is line after line. Leonard Skinner, Leonard Skinner. He, heart, that's rock and roll. Mafia, Mafia, Leonard Skinner. Give me 3 steps, that's one of my favorites. He just speeded up. Leonard Skinner, Leonard Skinner. Boy, they're giving me such variety. Leonard Skinner, Vietnam, Zeppelin. Leonard Skinner, Leonard Skinner, Leonard Skinner. So the further on down we are, the more they're concentrating on Leonard Skinner. Leonard Skinner, Leonard Skinner, Mafia. Leonard Skinner, Zeppelin. I'm boring you, but look, Leonard Skinner, Vivo, Leonard Skinner, Prince, pseudo rock and roll. Leonard Skinner, Eagles, Freebird, lyrics by Leonard Skinner. More sirens. Here's the motorcycle. He came back this way. That's the motorcycle they're chasing. He's got 2 sheriff's cars after him now. Fits in with this. Eagles, Leonard Skinner, Leonard Skinner. Here comes another chase car. That's 3 chase cars. Leonard Skinner, Allman Brothers, the Warriors, whoever they are. Leonard Skinner, Eagles, Golden Earring by Radar Love, Golden Earring, rock and roll. I remember Radar Love. Leonard Skinner, Mafia. Look at what they're doing. Hendrix, Leonard Skinner, 60 Minutes about Whitney Bulger's executioner, that's Mafia. The Frank Vincent story, Mafia. Bulger's former FBI handler, Mafia. Leonard Skinner. This is insane. This is stupid. This is YouTube. Oh, this is YouTube. Yeah, brain dead YouTube. All right, I'll tell you a couple of personal stories. I originally tried to join the Air Force after the remember we bombed the Cuba? I'm trying to remember what the exact name of that was. But they rejected me on medical grounds. But then later, they had a lottery, and we all had a number, and they, in order to resolve a political unrest thing, for people like me, I didn't have any complaints, people who could still be called and were getting older to be drafted for the Vietnam War, Cuban Missile Crisis. I tried to join during just after the Cuban Missile Crisis. That's Kennedy. So when they did the lottery drawing nationally, my number came up after the big cut. So after that, I was no longer, second time, eligible to be drafted ever. And I was almost past the age limit. So that's a Vietnam War story. I had a friend that lived one street over that when he came back from Vietnam, his job was guarding the airfield perimeter at Da Nang at night, dug in under the barbed wire, looking for Vietnamese infiltrators crawling in to try to kill soldiers and lay explosives. He basically was a mental wreck because of the fear every night, sitting in that foxhole, not knowing if he might die, alone. It wasn't like there were 10 people with him. He said they were individuals in foxholes. So you were completely on your own if something happened. In the middle of the night, under barbed wire. Mafia. Let's talk about mafia. When I lived in Philadelphia, I'm going to tell you 2 mafia stories, and this is over. I just wanted to demonstrate how stupid the YouTube algorithm is. Utterly low IQ. I said IQ 2, maybe IQ 1. I had a neighbor upstairs, Greg Walter, was a feature writer, Philadelphia Magazine. Used to go up to his apartment. His girlfriend was a stewardess on an international airline. So he had a smile on his face. I heard a lot of stories. Had a smile on his face because he and his girlfriend had been out to a nightclub the previous evening. And as they were dining, this was in South Philadelphia, as they were dining, a waiter came over with an ice bucket with an expensive bottle of vintage wine. And Greg went, I didn't order this. He said, it's from, the waiter goes, it's from, and he points across the dining room, this is a nightclub, to one of the local mafia bosses. This is what Greg told us. Robert, we're from the second floor and me from the first floor. Come on up, I want to tell you something. The waiter points over to a guy sitting at a table with his girlfriend or wife. It's a mafia guy, this is what Greg said. He named him. And the guy went, and the mafia guy went like this to him, meaning enjoy it, the wine. Now that, without any context, that story doesn't mean anything. Greg was a feature writer for Philadelphia Magazine. A few days before, the monthly issue came out, and his article was featured, and it was talking about the mafia families in Philadelphia. Mafia families in Philadelphia. And the guy who sent him the bottle of wine was one of the featured mafia people in the article. Greg Walter. And both Robert and I, we're neighbors, going, holy shit. And Greg says, oh, no. Nothing to worry about. Yes, I wrote it about him in details, and I talked to a lot of people, but what he was doing was, tip of the hat to me, for doing a good job, meaning probably the article was accurate. They're not going to bother you if what you're doing is doing your job, so long as you don't fuck with their money or their women. That's exactly how he said it. So long as you don't fuck with their women or their money. You're doing your job, you're doing it good, they're willing to acknowledge it. I used to work at the Ramen Haas Company at the Springhouse, Pennsylvania Research Labs. I lived in Germantown. I drove out there every workday. There was a guy in the next lab who was a technician like me, Italian descent like me, lived in South Philadelphia. Had a conversation with him one day about mafia guys. Are there really mafia people down there? And he said, oh yeah, yeah. Now, this is somebody I worked with. Oh yeah. He said, as a matter of fact, there's one that lives on the next street over, down a little bit. That's why, this is what he told me, that's why my wife, who likes to go out in the evening, she can go out and walk up and down the block, even at midnight, and she's got nothing to worry about. That's what he said to me. She's got nothing to worry about. If you did that in the neighborhood where I was living, if your wife went out at midnight walking up and down the block where I was living, that's not what would happen. Well, yeah, you'd have to worry about rape. And I kind of went, what? He said, in the neighborhood, no, this is an Italian talking about the mafia, a civilian like me, but living in a mafioso's neighborhood. He said, if you know where the mafioso's house is, it's X number of blocks this way and X number of blocks this way. And they put the word out on the street everywhere in South Philadelphia, all the way up to City Hall. That's what he said. You come down and fuck around there, you're dead. We'll find you and you will be very unhappy before you die. He says, we don't have any crime in our neighborhood. It's because I live one block over from a mafioso. That's what he told me. Sometimes the mafia are the police. Now, it sounds like I'm changing the subject. This is the last one. These are reminiscences. Greg Walter again. So I'm living in the same building, which was a mansion that had been a mansion for a meat packer's daughter. Then many years later, it sold and it's turned into apartments. I have an apartment on the first floor. Robert was on the second floor and another person. And Greg Walter and his girlfriend live on the third floor. So there's a knock on my apartment door at a certain time, 1971, September. So I let him in, and he's got a cardboard box with a lot of papers in it. And he asked me if I would be willing to hide that box under my bed. And he says, but I want you to know what it is. He says, I've got 3 boxes like this. Philadelphia Magazine editors commissioned me to write an article about Frank Rizzo, who's a Democrat candidate for mayor of Philadelphia. Frank Rizzo had been commissioner of police. And if you don't know who Rizzo was, just put Frank Rizzo in Google and you'll find out everything about him. I used to live on the street in Germantown where he grew up. He said, they commissioned me to write the article about Frank Rizzo, and one of the other staff writers, feature writers of Philadelphia Magazine, was supposed to write, did write, and in the September, basically they would publish Philadelphia Magazine on the first or second day of each month, and the September issue had the feature article about the Republican candidate for Philadelphia mayor, Thatcher Longstreth. Thatcher Longstreth, a mainline guy. And he wrote the article about Rizzo, but he had found out, and I won't say how, that they weren't going to publish it. And he was afraid that as word got around what was in the article, that the police might raid him and try to seize all of the documentary evidence he had for everything he had in the article. And what he was asking me to do was to hide one of the 3 boxes under my bed, thinking it's probably they wouldn't think it would be there if they try to come to, and then he opens the box and he, excuse me a second, pardon me. All right, I'm back. It reminded me of to take my medicine. So he pulls out a couple of sheets to show me an example of what he had in the box. And it was a memo. The one he showed me was a memo signed by Frank Rizzo, Commissioner of Police or whatever his actual rank was, down at what was called the Roundhouse in downtown Philadelphia at the far end of Ray Street, the new police building just a few years earlier that had been built there. And this was a notice to go out to all of the precinct stations where Rizzo was asking them to check their, I call them flak jackets. You would wear it in case somebody tries to shoot you. And he wanted them to inspect the ones they had at their station houses, and anyone that showed any kind of damage, not necessarily bullet damage, but maybe knife damage, to send it to the Roundhouse to him, because he was collecting evidence. This is Rizzo writing. It was signed by Rizzo. I saw it, signed by Rizzo, for a certain upcoming trial of 2 policemen. And what it was a certain person in West Philadelphia had killed a cop. Now remember, I'm thinking this back like almost 60 years. And I guess he died, but they wanted to get revenge on his half-blind brother. And a couple of cops walked into a bar in West Philadelphia where this half-blind brother of the cop killer was drinking, and they dragged him literally out into the street and shot him, executed him. But the way the story they tried to make it was, and what Rizzo was trying to help cover up for in the investigation, was that they claimed that he attacked the cops, so they had to kill him. Now, I'm trying to emphasize to you the strength of what was going on. That he had all kinds of stories like that from different parts of Rizzo's career. Go look it up and see what I'm talking about. Rizzo had a reputation of being a pretty violent cop, right from the beginning. So I agreed to hide the box under my bed. The publishers of Philadelphia Magazine decided not to publish Greg's article, which would have come out 3 days before the election. I wasn't in Philadelphia for the election because I left, as I recollect it, for Israel on the 1st of November. But the reason why Greg came to me very late in September was because he already knew that the publishers of Philadelphia Magazine had decided not to publish his article, which was really like Rizzo had secretly bought armored cars. What would police need armored cars for? Military armored cars. Go look it up. And why did the publishers not want to publish his article? Because they knew that if that article came out, Rizzo might not be elected. And given certain kinds of groups in the city who were causing a lot of trouble, who had a reputation of burning down whole neighborhoods and rioting, I'm hinting at it, they decided, as liberal as they were, that they didn't want Thatcher Longstreth. They wanted Rizzo, Iron Hand Rizzo, to get control of the city again. No, I'm not making this up. No, I'm not making this up. I can tell you some more things. So this started with the insanity of the YouTube things. It's mafia, rock and roll, mafia, rock and roll. Once in a while they'll put some other innocent thing in there, but it's mafia and rock and roll and Vietnam War. And how many rows did it go on for? So what I did is I told you my mafia story, then I told you my police mafia story. Oh yeah, I got to tell you something about Freebird, Leonard Skinner, my favorite Leonard Skinner tune. This will be a pleasant note. When I was working for that internationally known, internationally operating IT company, sometimes we had to take weekend duty. In other words, we used the internet and dialed in from home, but we would be alerted if there was a customer need on Saturday or Sunday, that even though we were home, or we could go into the office, but from home, we would be able to give them full support for our product. Well, there was a colleague who needed to be out of town on the weekend that was assigned to him, and he came around and he asked me if I might cover for him, and I said, sure. And then he offered to pay me the money that they would have given him anyway. And I said, no, you can keep that. But you could get me, if you can find it, the Leonard Skinner CD, Freebird. And about 2 weeks later, he had found one and he gave it to me. I think I still have it. So I'm connecting it up to Leonard Skinner. Have enough things happened in your life that if you sit here and you're ranting about the stupidity of just mainly the three kinds of videos that they're presenting, that it just doesn't make any sense. Can you relate that to anything exciting or people that you knew in your life? I really wonder about my path through life. I just wandered through life and all these things happen. And I'm not making any of this up. Steve A. before y'all. Just an idiot running his mouth. Saying Steve 73.